corn and beans and having a little stretch of dirt road, gravel road that I drive on to get to the little housing development where we live off of Bechtold Road up in the northwest corner of the city. I first was on the Natural Resources Committee, which is the precursor to Parks and Trails. That was in 2002, I think, and I've been on the Parks and Trails ever since. I'm the last original member. So it's been a real ride. It's been pretty fun. Yes.
You should point out you were on city council for a period.
Well, that's right. I missed 1 year because I filled in for city council for a year. Ran for election once, didn't win. I came back. They let me back on the Parks and Trails.
So you did win.
Well, yes, I did. I did. This has been. I have been living in Corcoran and being on Parks and Trails. It's just been a spectacular part of my life. So I'm busy doing a lot of other things. I'm long retired now, but I get so busy. I get so tired with other things that I'm doing. So this is an important part of it. My monthly routine.
He also won an award, but he never mentioned it.
I was actually there. I was at that luncheon.
So you,
so
yeah,
cool.
okay. Well,
So he heard your wonderful.
heard my wonderful speech. Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, welcome.
So welcome. Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to know that you've got Parks and Trails experience and finance experience too. That's good. It's all wonderful. All right. Unfinished business. There is none. New business. Hope Community Church Development. Jessica, what do you have?
All right, so coming to you, and we do have the applicants in the audience for the development. Hope Community Church Development, it's located off of 116 and 30. It is a mixed-use development. There's 4 commercial lots proposed, 677 residential units, with a mixture of senior apartments, market rate apartments, townhomes, twin homes, and villas. There are 4 anticipated phases for this project. And if I could get it to go to the next slide. Some recent background. Hope Community Church has been working with the city to provide land for the water treatment plant and the water tower. Both are now under construction. So if you've driven down County Road 30, you might see the big concrete pillar. That would be the water tower. They've also been coordinating with the Diamond Lake Regional Trail alignment between the city and Three Rivers. So they've been working to try and get that alignment all figured out and squared away. The zoning and land use, the proposed development spans about 4 parcels. 2 currently don't have any existing structures. 1 has an existing single family home, and the largest parcel contains Hope Community Church and Cemetery. A small portion of that is being used for the water tower. The Parks and Trails impact, the part that you guys are all here to provide your input. The 2040 comp plan shows that there is existing on-road trails on County Road 116 and County Road 30. There's also a proposed off-road trail in the vicinity of County Road 116. This serves as a placeholder for the Diamond Lake Regional Trail. There are no parks shown in this area of the 2040 comp plan. However, you might notice that there is a tot lot shown west of the church near the senior housing. So that would be private. It would have a private trail that makes it accessible. And I can kind of show you on here a little more. If I can find my mouse. Do you see my mouse? I know it's hard to see. Okay. So, oh man, I can't see up there.
It's there. Right there.
We might just wait on the map and I'll pull it up from the PDF and then I can zoom in on it if you guys don't mind. So the Diamond Lake Regional Trail, Three Rivers completed a feasibility study for the crossing location. They found that the ideal location for an underpass is about halfway between County Road 30 and Hunter's Ridge. There is a 40-foot corridor needed to accommodate that underpass, and there are anticipated retaining walls associated with that as well. The staff recommendation would be to provide park dedication credit for the city's standard 20-foot easement protocol. And the underpass would be constructed by Three Rivers, but currently there is not a set date for that construction. Prior to that, though, it does sound like the developer could put in the trails and everything, so it just wouldn't have that underpass. As far as park dedication goes, that off-road underpass for the Diamond Lake Regional Trail, you're looking at 0.14 acres. That's for the 20-foot easement as stated on the last slide. There is an approximate net area of 41.15 acres. And this is where the math gets a little confusing, so try and bear with me on this because with how many different types of units there are, the calculations get different allocations, right? So you can see that for commercial, it's about 59,000. For multifamily units, we're looking at 1.8 million. For the single family units, we're looking at 458,000 approximately. And then for the assisted living and memory care units, we're looking at 53,000. In speaking with our city planner, it sounds like the reasoning that the assisted living and the memory care units are a lower rate is because those individuals generally don't have so much of a burden on the parks because they're not using them as heavily as some of the other individuals. With that all being said, the grand total comes out to about 2.388 million, less the 1.5% for the 0.14 acres of underpass, which comes up to about $36,000. The remaining cash in lieu of land would be about $2.352 million for the project. With the caveat at the bottom in italicized, final park dedication calculation will be based on final land area calculations and the fee schedule in place at the time of the final plat approval. So, staff recommendation included in your packet is to move to recommend approval of acceptance of a combination of off-road trail easement and cash in lieu of land to satisfy park dedication requirements. Now, I'd like to get out of the slideshow and then open up some maps for you guys so that we can kind of walk through it that way. Does that sound like a good plan? Wonderful. Give me 1 second to deal with the technology. I confess how quick I had that up. Oh man, here I got Sharpie.
Yeah, it's a little premature.
I got so excited. Because of the dual displays. Okay. You can see right here, it says Hot Lot. I'm gonna zoom back out so you can see this is the existing church. And then the blue trail that's leading to it would be the private trail. However, not to be confused with this blue trail, which represents the Diamond Lake Regional Trail. Something else to note, because this one is something that tripped me up a little bit. Note that the north arrow is pointing to the right. Didn't notice that until recently. So this is County Road 116 down here. So if it would be helpful, I can shift it and orient it a different way. Do you want me to rotate it? Rotate it the wrong way, so we're gonna work
Just
through
keep
this.
dancing.
Yeah.
Just keep dancing. Go one more time.
Now I lost the page. Did I go too many times now?
helps it.
One more.
Yeah, one more time.
One more?
That's why they put the arrow
Well,
on. Up.
one more, is that it?
Now you got it.
There we go, now we're cooking. All right, it takes a village. So we've got the Diamond Lake Regional Trail in blue down here. And it meanders. And it goes off. This way, and this would be the crossing. Or I'm sorry, underpass. Separated grade.
And what's over there now?
That is.
Yeah. Okay.
It's zoned GMA. General mixed use.
It's zoned what?
On the east side.
Yeah, across 116.
Business park. That business park. East side. Should be one. Yeah, should. Nobody told them about.
What questions can I help answer? Can I zoom in anywhere?
Yeah.
That, the northern trail, that's all private trail?
This one up here. That is my understanding,
Within.
unless the applicants have other.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about the project tonight.
So yes, that's
You
shown.
introduced yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Josh McKinney with Measure Group. I'm a consultant for the applicant, which is a community church. Side note, I'm a landscape architect by training and license, so I also have a soft spot for parks and trails. And certainly have enjoyed working with Three Rivers to kind of get the correct alignment for this particular trail here. So the trail that is showing on site, these particular blue lines here are shown as private trails. It's our intent basically to kind of create a senior campus, so to speak, where we could have senior people that are living in the senior living buildings access, the church certainly, but also other portions of the development, including, say the commercial, without having to get in their car and drive. And it's close enough to also get these pathways wide enough to utilize golf carts. So it's something that we've been hearing from senior living developers or building developers. It's something they're looking for, is a little bit more of a potential to kind of get outside, maybe not walk, but certainly be driven to other portions of the development. And so that's the intent, at least initially. I certainly wanted to make sure that as we're proceeding with the preliminary plat, preliminary PUD, we're thinking about it that way of, how can we make these connections across multiple different uses? I think that's kind of the power of the mixed use for this particular development. The other thing I would note is, you noted the top lot. It's certainly something that's an attractive feature particularly for seniors, or senior developments, to want to have a place for the grandkids to go play and whatnot. But the other thing I would just note is, for example, these multifamily apartments, often, or I guess in this case, would for sure come with an amenity package that would be, something like amenity decks would include a pool area, grill stations, so on and so forth, that are competitive with the market for outdoor recreation opportunities for multifamily, the people living in the multifamily buildings. We also, are dealing, or want to feature, I guess, a pretty significant wetland structure as a central amenity for the active senior and the senior building. I think it's an attractive piece for us to really kind of locate a lot of these buildings around and feature it from both view shed standpoint as well as water quality standpoint. So then backing out kind of one additional layer, really the idea for the layout of a lot of this development is to push as much of the density away from existing homeowners as possible. And what that looks like for us is, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down just a little bit. Other way. So these existing larger lot homes, kind of that are on the northern portion of the site, we would locate our buildings farther away from those existing homes, and then utilize a single story villa to kind of create a buffer space and allow some additional creative grading to kind of occur that maybe wouldn't be possible with a multifamily structure. That would save as many trees as possible in that area to kind of keep the buffer for that spot. So with this, and when we move forward with our application, what we'd like to do, or what we will do, is kind of draw a section line through our site, and we're confident that the existing trees, the height of existing trees in the understory, really provide a nice buffer for the largest impact, the largest density for the project. It can be as far away as possible and certainly be dwarfed in scale by the water tower that is also going to be on site. So that's really the vision, is to try to kind of push all the density as far south as possible, while still taking advantage of kind of the natural resources in the area. I know with that, Sam, any other questions?
So my comment, the trail that's proposed goes through quite a few entrances and exits to parking lots. So I think the vision with this Diamond Lake Trail was really something for commuting up and down long distances. So I'm just wondering what's been considered as far as options that aren't as disrupted by the new development. We have the road, doesn't look like there's any interruptions now, but adding all these buildings, it's gonna be a lot of crossings that you have to go across, and we're kind of that 10-foot easement or 20-foot easement was like the minimum we were looking to dedicate for this trail. So as we were putting in new developments, the intent was to provide plenty of room for that trail to be a true commute. So I think for me, my impression is this is quite a way away from the intent of that. It's
Sure.
right alongside all this
So
development.
let me, I can kind of go back to where we started with Three Rivers, and kind of how we got to this current. One, if you don't be helpful. So if you wouldn't mind kind of bringing this thing down again, oh, by the way.
Still around.
So the original, alignment of this trail actually was supposed to be crossing, at 116 at this road called on Hope Way. There is basically every utility possible in that corridor, including both trunk water main, trunk sewer, a whole bunch of other main utilities, plus the intersection, all the intersection traffic and allocation. That really precluded that being a, possible crossing in that location. We had, in fact, our original renderings had that kind of a wider swath along Hope Way. That was something that extended the property to the west. And kind of preserve a corridor. So I grant you still would have crossed driveways, so we certainly could utilize the property in any sort of fashion without that type of condition. But I guess what's driving the current alignment really is kind of down to a lot of engineering, I guess, which is creating a situation where we can get an underpass under the road, which was the preferred alignment after they evaluated. They evaluated an overpass, they evaluated an on-street crossing. There's several options that they looked at. So what we came up with, now you can scroll back down. Is really what the Diamond Lake Regional Trail is supposed to do is go into the property to the west. But with the church, the wetland complex basically taking up the bulk of that area up here. Crossing this property in any sort of meaningful fashion was very difficult without having to kind of hug along an existing right way. And so that's the alignment that we've picked. We can certainly talk about the width of the trail corridor, I guess. And I think, we're still, what we're showing on this is really the constraints relative to stormwater. But would certainly be interested in feedback in terms of what this board would want to see in terms of what that corridor width is. I don't think we can solve necessarily the crossing issue per se, but would be interested to hear more.
Question,
Yeah.
can you scroll down on the map? So, what about if that trail that is the Diamond Lake Regional Trail, that's the blue one in the center, correct?
Mhm.
What if you brought that all the way to the south end of the property and just wrapped it around and then made it like a 90-degree turn back north again and met up at the same point?
So, right now, this location right here, the trail is 15 feet underneath the surface of that road. So there's pretty significant retaining walls that will be installed in order to facilitate that, along with some, like a head wall, to create that tunnel. So what would end up having to do, and I think if I understand you correctly, is we'd have to do kind of a switchback in that location.
The question is, why does the trail go through the center of all this activity and
Rather
not
than
around
around
The
the
bottom.
perimeter where there is all the disruption?
And then you could do it, you wouldn't have to do it like a 90-degree. Couldn't you go like diagonally under the road? Versus having
That's a
it,
great question.
okay.
It's somewhat out of our control relative to the crossing. The crossing is somewhat set by Three Rivers Park District, so. With that crossing location, we were somewhat limited in terms of what the alignment could be outside of it, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to kind of skirt the question. I understand exactly what you're saying. And frankly, there's a 50-foot setback along both those roads, both 116 and 30, that we have to be clear of with any buildings. So if that's what the city wants to see, I mean, that would work fine for us as well, but it sounds like.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
could you discuss what it would do if you flipped the trail to the opposite side of that road?
Sure.
So that you wouldn't be crossing as many accesses to the multifamilies, you would cross the access to the water tower and the drive lanes into the church, which I would imagine don't see traffic as often as the other sites would.
Sure. I don't know that I have any negative reaction to that in terms of that. I mean, it would be an easement that would be something that the church would have to approve. Wouldn't be subject to something of ownership of this particular application. But I don't have any problems, I guess, if that's what the council want, or if that's what this board wanted to see or would rather see in the situation. If this is the crossing location, which I think was is that what we're talking about specifically tonight, is the crossing location and the dedication relative? Or is it the entire route?
We're concerned really with your part of the route.
Sure, yeah, I mean, we're open to it, honestly. If that's what you'd rather see, I think the question back to Three Rivers then would be is, hey, do you want to see a crosswalk or a crossing at a mid-block? For this trail? So, because they would have to cross Oswald Farm Road in that situation and not cross the driveways instead. It's, for that, it's a horse piece to me. It's 20 foot.
So
either side.
they're at the far west end, the trail crosses Osborne Road anyway, just in a different.
Yeah, this will end up being a T intersection condition.
Okay.
So this is a little bit bold here. This is now basically T, and this Oswald Farm Road that's shown here will kind of extend into that property to the west in the future.
What is the length of the trail through your property? I was listed in there.
A great, I'm not sure.
I think it. Because that has to do with your.
And where does it
calculation.
connect on the west end then?
My understanding is this goes basically all the way through the Rowdy property and then goes south across.
Over there.
across there.
Okay.
And I have one more question.
Yes,
If you can scroll back down, just we go up, there you go. So that oh, right there, and maybe go up just a little bit more. I'm just to the end of that blue trail. Oh, down, sorry, down, my bad. Right there. So see where that trail ends at the tip of the parking lot?
right here, yeah.
Yep, which I think is great, but I can see a lot of people wanting to get to the Diamond Lake Regional Trail, and they're gonna cut through that parking lot now to get to the Diamond Lake Regional Trail. So is there a way you can run a connection that actually connects to the Diamond Lake Regional Trail without just ending it?
Yeah, so I can explain that here. So there's actually current pavement at this location.
Okay,
So there's a kind of a grade difference here. This is mostly intended to basically route things like golf carts to the commercial piece. So the other piece I would say is there's sidewalks and there would be a crossing that's sorts with sidewalks on either side of Oswald Farm Road. So to your point, if someone wanted to walk there, how would they get there? We can certainly look at that as well.
Question, back to the underpass.
Yeah.
What's the interplay or, the design team, we talked about this other Hennepin County bikeway trail that would go down 116. I believe that's still the portion where it would go, right?
I think so.
So are those two teams talking together?
That's
Otherwise you've got another,
Yeah.
so just something to be aware of, that there's another plan to have a bikeway trail right there.
So.
If it were an underpass, how would that work, I guess?
There is some caveats to that Hennepin County Bikeway Trail, because that is simply, it was a grant regional solicitation, so nothing is set in stone by any means. That money, I don't believe would be allocated until 2028, 2029.
It would,
So it's definitely somewhere we could get some involvement from them, but it's so early at this point that I don't know that
Mhm.
it would make a lot of difference. My other thing I wanted to note regarding the Three Rivers trail, they do have a lot of requirements for like turn radiuses and things of that nature. So I would imagine there's probably a good reason why they didn't try and come down here and do a hard left turn and then a hard right turn, because I know some of our alignments were already a little contentious. So we're trying to be more amenable to those standards, just to make the trail that same Three Rivers experience. Does that help explain maybe the alignment a little bit?
It does.
So it would be something that they would have,
This is what they've given us to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay, something they would probably have to figure out when that project goes through, separate of this.
So
That's what
I
I'm
did
saying.
look, it looks to me like that trail is 326 feet long.
Mhm.
So it's about the length of a football field.
Mhm.
And I would, the one side of the road or the other, it's a relatively small blip on the extent of the trail through the community. And I think we're gonna have, by the time the trail is built, we will have several of those where there's something going on. A good share that most of the trail should be through much more rural looking areas than that particular section, but 300 feet.
And I guess we studied it just on a very, very high level of kind of how that trail would go further west, and there's that wetland complex that we mentioned up here. Kind of wraps around and kind of gets down here, and so it does make some sense that there would be portions of that trail that would be. Closer to the wetland, or be able to get to that area to be a little more scenic than what we're showing here. I mean, we studied this originally of trying to route through, but kind of behind the church, if you want to scroll up. Yeah, we just ran away. We actually looked through it, when it was still up here, we looked, basically diving around and then basically kind of hugging that wetland complex. And then it got to be challenging, where we basically ran into a wall of wetland over here and you couldn't really run through the site. So I get it. I understand that comment regarding, potential connection further south on a private trail makes a ton of sense. We should do it anyway. So we can incorporate that. But relative to the stuff that's kind of more in the Three Rivers Parks District stuff, we kind of are doing what we're told.
So like a bigger discussion for that would be like, I guess as a Parks and Trails Commissioner is that even the right place for that trail? I mean, do we have to allow Three Rivers to go through that section, or can we pick a different parcel that directs it to a different location that's not quite so busy with all the parking lots?
I think you run the same risk. It's, what the development is that you're getting with this. And you could propose to punt it, and that's definitely an option, but then who knows what you get down the road. The other thing is, as far as alignment goes, you guys kind of help set the alignment too. So to change it at this point, we can, but I think it would be a very serious conversation with Three Rivers having that cooperative agreement.
Yeah.
I think this whole region, because of the way that it's guided, it's going to go through things like this, through this part of the city. It's not the ideal natural trail experience. So I think as we're thinking about it from a parks perspective, we want to make the segments as short and quick to exit as possible, so you can get into the more attractive parts of the natural features of that part of the city. So I think that the tunnel is really a major value because you're not going to get stuck at intersections waiting to cross. And I think the other thing we can try to focus on is how do we minimize driveway crossings, or at least busy driveway crossings, so that people can just zip through this part of the trail and get into something that's more natural.
If I could reframe it for a second too, while it's a disadvantage that it's crowded, there's going to be 677 new units that are going to access it right there. And so in terms of trying to provide an amenity to new residents, you can't get it better than right there in their front yard. And you want those families to activate the space and get them into these other parts of the community that they otherwise might not be able to access.
So one thing that, you mentioned like this happens all over the place. It will have to happen. One thing that stuck out to me though is the golf carts.
Yeah.
It's not something that typically we go back and we see, I look at this, I see red, I see blue, I see green. Like she was saying, it was really busy. So how do you solve for that kind of a problem with bikers coming through and golf carts?
Yeah,
Kind of.
good question. So actually, the golf carts aren't actually allowed on Three Rivers Parkway trail. So that's only a private trail, and I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty certain that the Corcoran code allows for golf carts on public streets. So I would anticipate they would use those routes as well. This was just basically one of the ideas of I lived in one of these villa units, and I was going to be doing some, wanting to walk to something that was programming at the adult active senior. Well, I could do that. I could walk, or I could take a golf cart and all over there, and I'd be set. It's basically to get another option so that we get people away from having to drive 300 feet. It doesn't make any sense. So while we're not necessarily, but we're hearing that's a valuable thing from developers. Like, well, let's see what the reaction and the temperature is from city staff, and it's been positive of just trying to provide a different mode of transportation there. As far as we're concerned, like we're going to create a trail that is wide enough for that to be possible. And if no one ever uses a golf cart on it, it's still successful for us. So.
Have you seen any instances of mixed use between motorized and pedestrian traffic? Because we're talking a active older adult community as well, and so it seems kind of risky.
Yeah, I mean, Certainly, I haven't personally worked on one that has done that. We're just hearing from multiple senior developers that this is something that's attractive to them. Certainly need to work through the details of how that's managed. I completely understand the concern.
Is the church associated with the senior housing? There, I see like it's connected by maybe a hallway. Is that?
This is a great question.
is-
You get to hear about this before anybody else. We have fire staff actually, so this is something we're gonna be working through as a revision. That was originally, I thought of as a at-grade linkage between the two. The idea being, hey, if somebody's in assisted living or somebody's in an independent living, they could walk over to the church for services and vice versa. The church staff could essentially provide additional services for the senior living building. There's some concerns relative to fire access in that location. So one of the things that we kind of worked through this afternoon is actually that's just gonna be a tunnel. So it'll change this area a little bit. So this will be a tunnel, so this now will be on grade. So we're gonna try to do something that's a little bit nicer for that toplet area, maybe a little more of a plaza type thing. That'll allow fire trucks to access the rear of that building, as well as we kind of clean up any issues relative to concerns on fire safety. So we're working through that. It's literally hot off the press. So, but it is that you're correct. These two would end up being, the idea would be to be linked, and that's something that's been in a vision from Brian and the church for like 20 years. Is the idea to kind of reach out and provide additional services to the senior living.
Thanks.
So, this thing about that corner, which is, the church has been there now for a good while. And it still is the church that's sort of, as I drive down County Road 30, which is 100 times a week, it seems like. The church is off in the distance, and there's a farmer's field, a little wetland, and it just feels very much like Corcoran. And that's gonna change. Because all of a sudden there's no farmer's field, it's parking lot and rooftops. And I know that you will have to go through the watershed commission, to make sure that all that hardscape is not going to impact Corcoran's sort of tenuous drainage system. And so I have confidence that will be worked out. And so, a lot of it is in the details. And you're not quite at that stage yet, but I would really encourage you to really look seriously. If there's some way to, use some forest paving on some of those parking lots to not drain something other than into the ponds and into the wetland, to just continue some of that sort of work, that would be great. Selection of trees and landscaping is critical. I've seen enough autumn blaze maples, all in a row. Something more interesting, something more creative would be really, really welcome.
Absolutely.
And I know that there's some woodland at the north. Actually, a lot of times when you get looking at that, it's some cottonwoods and some box elders that are nearing the end of their life anyway. And so, but to put some trees that are native and some interesting trees in there would really add a lot to this site.
Yeah.
And I think it's make it much more of a showcase.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So we're all the landscaping that we're putting in is native, so native species. Also, I would just, I would note that the council and staff had kind of approved this Northeast area standards recently, and frankly, it's a good document for us to improve the design quality of something like this. This type of development is going to be vastly, superior, I guess, to a similar or peer community that doesn't have those type of standards it's holding itself to. So to your point, water is well handled in there in terms of alternative means of, compliance relative to porous pavement, rain gardens, like these other things that are, it's sad that we characterize as extra, but certainly is extra compared to this typical development pattern right now. Elm Creek watershed is certainly one of the more difficult watersheds, so you're correct that I would feel comfortable.
On purpose,
Yeah, I would feel comfortable, sleeping at night knowing that your natural resources are well protected in terms of the runoff from this type of facilities. And the other thing I would just note is you know, a lot of this preliminary planning that we're doing on the preliminary plat, preliminary PUD. You know, is stemming from a process from the EAW that was also completed on this project, that kind of went through all of the environmental, the possible, environmental impacts. On the project. It was also designed to figure out, you know, what's the maximum that this site could yield without kind of hitting a threshold where we have an issue on watersheds or you know, other landscaping or tree clearing issues, so on and so forth. So I guess what I would just say is, you know, what we're showing looks intense and it's intense for a reason. What could be built, you know, on this, you know, we basically are showing right now on this plan is less than what was approved through the AW or, you know, gone through the AW process. So we're backing it down to what the market's looking for in terms of these units. But also what that does, and it's a good thing, is we go out with a lot of impervious surface and now we're kind of backing it down. We have a whole bunch of other opportunities for landscaping, screening, these other things, to really kind of make it. When you say, hey, it's not gonna look like Corcoran, we certainly want to make sure it complements, you know, it doesn't, it's not like this, like, you know, tower in the middle of the field. And I would say the other thing is, a lot of, you know, both in the county roads, we're seeking some variance relative to a setback. Right now, the road, we're required to have a 50-foot setback on both roads. But they're asking for an additional 10 feet. So with that flexibility, we have a whole bunch of landscape standards from screening and placement of vegetation in that area. So it's not going to be road building. It's going to be significantly screened from that.
And that will be true even when both of those are 4-lane.
Correct. Yep. The right of way is expanded. And basically from that point forward, we have 50 feet of landscaping that's pretty densely screened.
There's a spot in Maple Grove where it looks like you jump off the balcony and land on the road. It's really inappropriate.
Right. So we're thinking about it. I just want to give you some comfort that we're not coming from the spot of like trying to jam as many units as possible. We're certainly thinking about trying to soften some of these spaces. And I know that might not necessarily be the directly what's being considered this evening, but I did want to give you guys comfort because in having the opportunity to hear why you're on this board. It's just additional, if I were somebody that were on the board, I'd want to hear about it, so.
Will there be any green roofs as part of it? And that's one of the options that we have in the Northeast District guidelines.
Yeah, tough to say, on the commercial structures. I would say on either multifamily building, you're gonna have a component of some landscaping on the roof. I'm not sure if it's gonna be a true green roof as, you know, to basically capture some of that water. But certainly it's not going to be a, you know, large open space of concrete without any sort of landscaping. They usually incorporate a pretty significant amount of landscaping in those areas. Like I said, I'm not sure is really the answer.
Josh, where do those amenity areas land on the map?
Yeah, good question. So I'll do this building first. This building has a kind of this area right here, would be at, you know, at the second level would have some sort of potentially a you know, pool. This one would probably have a pool. This one would just be a landscape seated area back there. So those type of closets that are created there. This building down here, based on some feedback we received from the city last week, we're reworking this a little bit. It would also have a landscaped kind of plaza type space, just in a bit of different configuration shown right here. The senior buildings, still working through those landscape spaces. We're showing kind of a large patio space here. This would have some pickleball courts and some other things that we're looking through, just from an amenity space on the active adult units.
What would be how many residents at capacity when this is completed? Some guess.
1,000.
1,000, okay. Jessica, are you up for this challenge? Can we go back to the comprehensive plan and look at this area on potential park locations?
There aren't any.
So,
Not in this location, but nearby,
oh, okay.
Further west.
further west.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can actually get zero in on that. Because that's getting to an area, a size where we're speaking neighborhood park at least, even though you've got some of those facilities here. And part of what Parks and Trails does is says, okay, here's an area that does not have a park. So then we have to plan the next development. We'll then Then we'll want the park instead of the money.
Yeah, and at one point in time, I just will, and certainly you can complete the task
Or
here.
you're good.
That was faster than I.
That's favorably, that's good. Can you, now we can zero in on that.
Yep, that's the hard part for
That's the
me.
hard
You
part.
guys know I don't do good with locations.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So we've got, this is Bellwether.
Mhm.
I can zoom out a little bit more if that helps. So realistically, this is this one and then this are the closest one.
Okay.
When the concept came before council, we had discussed, does it make sense because of the large number of residents and the lack of a nearby park?
Mhm.
Should we evaluate revising the park plan to add something maybe in the parcel to the west
Mhm.
that's currently guided, I think, medium residential or mixed residential? And council at the time, we didn't debate it in depth, but when you're adding 15 to 18% of the city and less than 1% of the land area, it makes sense for there to be something close by to them. I think alternatively, you would want a really easy way to get to the Bellwether Park. And that may be ready sooner than anything we could do in an adjacent parcel.
But at some point, the parcel to the west will be developed. We should be ready to use that. The development is a place for another park.
Did I read somewhere when I was reading this, that does the church also own the property to the south of 30? I know,
The south of 30.
no, okay,
That's one better.
I thought I read it, but I must have been wrong, okay.
Question as it relates to the 2040 plan, you might know this. This is our guide, but we're not beholden to it, correct?
It is those are big circles drawn fuzzy as a search area. So, the further away you get from it, then the more argument there is.
Sure.
But no,
At one point in time, we thought these parks made sense,
the parks.
but we could have a big green dot somewhere.
Yes,
else.
yeah.
Great.
One thing that's helpful for us as a community is in 2025, which is just around the corner, we'll start the comp plan process over again. And it's not due until 2028, but that allows us to refine some of these important questions then. And some of the development that's happening right now will be not quite done. So all the phases of this will not be done. And so it's a great opportunity actually to have this conversation as part of the next comp plan. Because between now and 2028, it's not going to develop so fast that you're going to be able to put those pieces, but it is coming quickly. And so having those strategic conversations to think about, we thought 10 years ago, this is where it was going to happen. This might not make sense now. Now's an opportunity to, I hate the COVID word, pivot our plan.
That word predates COVID.
It became really effective. And
Okay, with the location of the water tower, that is supposed to be serving the east side of town. How long before it heads west? Because we really went to the west, won't get a whole lot of development without the city water and sewer.
I think it depends on if the council determines that we want to expand the MUSA in the next comp plan,
Mhm.
which we may or may not choose to do.
And there's also significant development happening just north. Coming down towards us, and that may change your outlook on east to west development.
And what does the county do about these transportation corridors too? I mean, that's some key question that needs to be answered because that's going to impact development pace too.
So who owns the lot to the west? Do we know?
Blackwell Drive,
Okay, and there's no,
actually Marlis, who is the wife of the real one since passed, but his son Glenn and his brother are the state.
okay, is it being farmed or is
It's
it?
currently being.
Okay. And no one's heard any plans.
Well,
There are plans.
there,
Whispers.
Sure.
well, I would
Yeah.
say there's a lot of national people.
Hmm.
Some who are building working currently that would be very interested in this. Property, 80 acres or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
That was one of the reasons. Maybe I.
Go ahead, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Brian Wolfer, pastor, lead pastor of Hope Community. One of the reasons we wanted to put the new street Hope Way in, which goes all the way to the Corcoran border, was to alleviate or take future traffic from the Corcoran development when that would happen off of Hunter's Ridge, which is where the 6 houses to the north are. So we've tried to just think forward about if I was living in those houses, would I want the traffic of 400 homes going down my street when I was accustomed to only 6 homes, you know? So that was one reason why we did this, and it allowed us to do kind of a step up to a higher density as we went further south. The other thing I'd like to also mention is getting back to this crossing with the tunnel under the road for the trail. We had originally had discussions of having that up at Hope Way, which Josh mentioned, there's a lot of complications with that, but one of the big complications was also the elevation of that spot versus a little bit further to the south. As you go north on 116, the elevations drop. And so there'd be a much higher probability of, after a good rain, there could be a lot of water flowing into that tunnel. And so they, Three Rivers, decided this is the best crossing area for it. But this trail will actually cross under 116, go to the north, and then go down Hunter's Ridge and connect to the Bellwether development. And so that's the kind of the master plan of everything. And so the crossing, I think, is pretty much set in stone now with Three Rivers, as far as where it should cross into, shall we say, our property or this development.
Thank you, Brian. That's helpful.
Other questions, comments?
I agree. I'm happy with the crossing being a underpass. I didn't mention that before, but so I like that concept, especially for all those new residents that'll be quick to be able to get across there. I would just echo consider the most least burdensome way for this trail to allow someone to get to that exit.
And so, I mean, honestly, I'll send an email tomorrow to Three Rivers to see if it's something that they'd be willing to do, get on the other side of the road, because I think there's a couple of engineering reasons why it might make some sense as well. This is just what we were directed so far.
And as far as bringing, Councilman Jacob, Jeremy's comment about bringing the trail on the, should we say, the church side of Oswald Farm Road, we'd be very open to that. If that serves this whole concept better, we can always grant an easement for that. And if that's a better solution, and that's a solution that this commission really would like to see happen, that can easily be done on that part. So that's not a problem.
We appreciate that flexibility.
Yeah, it's, as always, we've been always very flexible. Yeah, we're here for that. Let's put a water tower somewhere. Doesn't get much more flexible than that.
It does also get rid of 4 driveway crossings.
Mhm.
Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 driveways and a street crossing in exchange for 1 street crossing at the other end.
Mhm.
Well, especially if that road on the bottom is gonna extend to the left.
Yep, and that's actually a condition of the engineering condition of approval, or is it one of the engineering comments that we're addressing at the moment? So I can attest that will be done in order for this. So I think it's a good idea. We'll run it past Three Rivers. If they think it's a good idea, we'll figure it out.
Okay, what do you need from us?
I need a
Recommendation?
recommendation.
Recommendation?
Just gonna-
Recommendation to approve the.
Trying
the
to
vote, yeah.
I was quicker with technology before.
Yeah,
Now I-
pressure's on.
All right. So the staff recommendation would be to move to recommend approval of acceptance of a combination of off-road trail easement and cash in lieu of land to satisfy park dedication requirements. It sounds like there is a consensus though to propose moving the trail across the street if that's an option. So if you'd like to include that in your motion, you certainly can.
I'd like to make that motion,
Everything I just said.
everything you just said.
Is there a second to that one?
I'll second that move.
Thank you.
That's how we do it when it gets complicated.
We're a recommending body, and so I think the recommendation is clear, so I think we can live with that. Further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very exciting. Yeah. All right. Thank you all, nice discussion. Yes.
That was thoughtful.
I got a quick question for Jeremy, with the apartments in here. I thought we had a limit of 3 stories.
I'm not sure if that's true in the mixed use area.
In what?
I'm not sure if that's true in the mixed use area. I think there is a limit, there's a height limit. I don't know if there's a number of stories limit.
Okay.
That would be a good question for us to bring up with.
I thought we had a 3-story limit so that things didn't get too out of hand. You know?
I know we have talked about a height limit.
Mhm.
I don't think there's necessarily a 3-story limit.
So what is the height limit then? I mean, how many, don't laugh at me, how many stories is it? Because I don't-
It might depend on what that first story's elevation
Uh-huh.
is. Let me check the code.
Okay, I didn't mean to.
You asked a
It's a good
technical
question.
Here, Valerie.
Yeah, because with the water tower, I see that space being like new town center. Like last night, they were talking about how it's gonna face that corner intersection. It's just, so building out that space is just gonna be so important that it's, visually,
Mhm.
height, everything, like
Mhm.
an important space, so.
We can go on and he can jump in when.
You can jump in when you
Yeah,
find it.
it'll just be a minute. I'm
Oh,
not-
okay,
We're all watching you, Jared.
yeah,
Pressure's on you now.
yeah, I was gonna say, not Jessica.
Okay, maximum principal building height in the GMU district is 35 feet at the minimum setbacks, but may be increased up to a maximum of 50 feet with increased setbacks at a rate of 1 foot additional height for every 5 feet additional setback. So your max height is higher in the middle of the site than at the edge of the site, up to a max of 50 feet.
So how many stories is that? How many, but
It could be 4, it could be 5.
Yeah.
okay,
I think they run out of parking before they run out of height.
gotcha.
Yeah, is your first floor exposed? Or is it at grade? There's a lot of variance there.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
All right, reports, 2023 year in review and 2024 priorities.
Yes, let's talk about what you did. There's a lot. So we'll start with the annual presentations from city departments. You heard from Public Works, the administration team, as well as the police department. We coordinated the annual tree giveaway, reviewed 2024 fee schedule and budget for parks and recreation items, toured the open space park during a work session in the Bellwether development, provided feedback regarding the Corcoran Meat Locker property sale, reviewed a lot of RFPQ stuff, both the actual RFPQ itself and the submissions. We accepted resignations of Commissioners Meister and Weifels, and we welcomed on Erzberger and Schmidt. Welcome. Don't worry, there's more because you guys have done so much. We got awarded the $300,000 from the Hennepin County Youth Sports Facility Grant for the remaster project. We met with the Wacker and Espaseth family on playground collaboration. Reviewed plans for the Red Barn Pet Retreat, participated in commissioner training, discussed future signage, reviewed a few policies, set up a cooperative agreement with Three Rivers, recommended approval of a bike rack at Wildflower, recommended working with HKGI for master park planning and design services, and recommended support, put a little asterisk there, of the Hennepin County 2024 regional solicitation for the County Road 116 bikeway project. This is not everything that was included in the report. This is, I don't even think half. So you guys have done a lot of stuff this past year. And I wanted to make sure we highlight that on the slides too, because it is a lot. So thank you. But now let's look at 2024. So priorities.
Say, whatever happened with that park collaboration with the family?
We were waiting to team up with HKDI and get them more on board, and then we're gonna merge. Okay, so priorities for 2024. The Diamond Lake Regional Trail, so continued work to develop trails that align with the cooperative agreement. You even accomplished that today, and it's not even 2024 yet. Open space, park, and boardwalk in the Bellwether development. So working with HKGI to further plan the boardwalk, including design, cost, timeline for installation, the connections to the trails. City Park remaster, continuing to work with HKGI to further the work on the remaster, including designs, costs, timelines for construction. And then additional funding is likely going to be explored as well to see if we can get additional grant opportunities, etc. Wayfinding, so creation of a wayfinding policy for signage at the parks, including directional and monument signs. That will also be in collaboration with HKGI more than likely. They have history doing things of that nature, so it'll be really helpful to have them kind of guide us in the right direction. Future financial obligations, further defining the upcoming projects, upcoming park dedication funds, and begin earmarking the funds for projects. So really starting to take that money and allocate it to certain areas so that we can get a good idea of what's to come. And then the final thing is development park standards update. So reviewing the vision for park standards and updating as necessary to better reflect preferred amenities, spaces, kind of what, if anyone recalls, Sharon and Tom worked on a development standard. Might have been free some people's time, which is fair. And I can send it out if you guys want to take a look at it and provide any thoughts. But that would be something, again, working with HKGI. So really getting them on board, having them as part of the team, and catapulting us forward. What are our thoughts on the 2024 priorities? I'm presenting them to you, but you can change them. You can tell me you hate all of them. Oops, sorry, I can probably leave that up.
Looks like we'll be busy.
Again,
Are we gonna get a representative from HK to the $10 meetings, or how's that gonna work? Or will we only hear of it secondhand?
I would imagine that, yeah, there is.
Every time they come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that in terms of, I've worked with a couple different developers like that, and in terms of bang for our buck, it's a lot better for us to take the feedback with them, and then once we've clarified in here your intentions or your requests, then we can unleash them on that in a way. Because sitting here and listening to us talk about it is going to cost us a lot of money to have them just sit here. So that's not the best use of the dollar. We want to get every ounce that we can from their expertise.
So as I looked through the priorities, commissioner training kind of popped at the top of my list. I want to make sure that everybody who's here kind of understands both the kind of broad scope of what parks and trails, what we were thinking back when we developed our master plan 20 years ago. And so we've done some of that in previous years, but now we've got a couple new commission members. So it might be a time for doing some review of that. I think everybody's found it useful to look at it again, you know, and so it takes time. Some of those months when we don't have quite such a heavy workload from the development standpoint, then to do that, to do training, I think will serve us well. So every meeting should have, you know, a meeting where all we get is sort of the routine things. is not my idea of what a good meeting should be for you guys, because you're giving your time for the city and it should be a well spent couple hours. Tuesday.
John and I
I
were
would-
just talking about training.
I would appreciate that.
I did have a quick question on the standards update. Is that something that goes to like city council for approval, or is that something that's just a recommendation by us?
I don't think it made it all the way. I think the idea was that we were gonna, as a team, kind of collaborate, figure out what the vision is. And then it kind of got put on hold when we were looking at doing something with a park development consultant. So at this point, I think it's just kind of on pause, but it would like.
But it would be something that would go as, okay.
That policy, I think, was shared with council.
Was it?
I think. I don't know if it was
at a
formally adopted. The good thing about the policy is it puts a little bit of a vision together for what we want a development to include. The challenge, I think, is that when we've gotten applications, they tend not to adhere to it. So for example, the most recent one, I think, was the Bellwether development, where they end up with, I forget the exact dimensions, but it was about half the size that the policy suggested for a park. And I think there's a lot of value for this commission to have some debate, what we feel is a minimum threshold, and try to hold developers to that as PUDs are being negotiated by staff before they get to you, because by the time they get here, everything is baked in and it's more challenging to get things to change. And council hasn't been great about supporting the policy. So I think things that we can do next year as interest rates start to drop and activity accelerates, if you're looking for priority and when you tackle these things, I would put that one early in the year. Just because I feel like based on development's pace, we'll probably benefit most from having it sooner rather than later.
If I could challenge you also, as you're thinking about those park standards, having just come from a community in which we did something similar, and then they start looking very much alike. And so, you know, as you think about what do you want Corcoran to look like uniquely Corcoran? Developing standards that embody that character, rather than sometimes we fell prey to almost some cookie cutter standards. And as a result, you can't even tell sometimes which neighborhood you're in, because they look so similar. And so as you're thinking about those park standards, there's some beautifully unique things. If you look in the comp plan, it talks about the rural character. How do you embody the rural character of this community in your park standards? So that you don't think, because you went to this particular park, that you're in any one of these other communities to the east of us. How can we establish standards that are uniquely or distinctly Corcoran? So that would be my challenge to you, having just come from a community in which, you know, we put in a lot of parks, unfortunately, and there was a lot of intentional effort. But parks are expensive, and so you aren't going to get a chance to redo it for a long time. And so as you're trying to establish unique character of the community, it's an opportunity to do that as you establish the standards.
I think when the Espets came in, those of you who were part of the commission at that time, they talked about sort of the defining feature for them of City Park was the dinosaur theme. And so I think it's really interesting when you go to a park and there is sort of a theme to it. And with our general, you know, rural natural spaces, there's a lot of things that we could do. There could be like a North Woods style park where you've got like a bear and a moose theme. You could do open fields and woodlands as a theme. So there, for the number of parks that we're going to develop, you know, 3 to 5 in the next 5 years, we could come up with a pretty interesting list that would make them destinations, different from one another, different from other cities, and worth the investment we would be making because of giving Corcoran a sense of identity.
And offering amenities that also capture that rural character. So I sent Jess, when I first got here, a playground, I was like, check this out. It looks like a farm. It's a a giant windmill, but you climb up the windmill in order to go down the slides. Like, you know, so it captures the spirit of the community or capturing the wildlife spirit, having interactive opportunities. You know, great opportunity out here to take wetland education. So as you're trying to educate the next generation on why this is a special place, what's unique about this space. Those are some of the things that you don't often see as you're trying to establish standards in a park that would set this community different, distinct.
And part of what generated this, my concern was that when I look back on Wildflower Park and the park in Bellwether, was that, you know, the neighborhood park is supposed to have a certain size range. And they came in just a little under the minimum. Well, okay, you know, sort of, well, close enough. But when we went back and after the development was done and looked at part of Bellwether, it's not a park, it's a wide trail. It loses that really what we were trying to do. And so, I mean, there's Wildflower Park is just fine. It's got a really nice outside, you know, entertainment, recreation, sport, you know, area to do that. But it could have been better, and the next park we develop should be better. There's always, developers want to have as many houses. I think in the Bellwether Park, we've got a park that has like 3 too many houses around it, so our access to the park is very narrow. And right now, we've got an open space park at the north end of Ravinia that access is going to be an issue because it's an access off of a very small little road, and that's going to be a big open space park. And fortunately, it's adjacent to one of the golf courses, which probably will not last forever, so we can get access from the other side. But we sort of backed ourselves into a bit of a corner. And so I'm hoping that some standards, so that we not put ourselves in exactly that position again, would be something we learned from our experience. There's nothing wrong with the parks we've done, they're fine, they're really appropriate, but we could have done better, and we should do better the next time. That's what sort of is generating my interest in developing those standards. So we can say, you know, it's a nice park, but you really need 4 more acres. We really need to not have this look like most of the park is in somebody's backyard. So, my own sort of pet peeve.
I have a quick question, as long as you brought up that park north of Ravinia, because that's the open space park. And I think you access that through Old Sturbridge Road. Currently, there's like a strip.
Yep.
Like, what is the timeline for when that open space park would be developed?
There is no timeline at this point.
Okay,
You could propose one.
We could propose one, yep. But because we don't have access accepting through Old Sturbridge, I mean, right now, the kids in the neighborhood are designing some trail systems for us.
definitely. Very true.
There is a trail that does enter in on the west side of it, but it just ends. Yeah, I think you could see significant people using it as like a running path, even if it was just, you know, wood chip or gravel. So there are things that we could do that wouldn't be ruinously expensive if we wanted to develop that.
On the, up in the Bellwether, on the other side of the wetland that we don't seem to be able to get a bridge over. That space over there actually got tree removal with a trail right there, and I think those trees come out now. It's got 4 years or several years of brush growing up in that area, but that's ready for further development. To that extent, the trails are laid out and have been figured into the.
Kevin told me yesterday they had done the grading for that trail and they'll be paving it in the spring.
Ooh, well, how about that?
I was out on site on Friday, talking to some different residents that were concerned about alignment. And we were working on some of the details of that, so. Yeah,
It's a nice space, isn't it?
it is beautiful.
Could I propose that we take a look at that?
Field trips are good.
No, for Ravinia. Can I propose that we take a look at that in the next, like, first quarter or second quarter of 2024?
Space. There, see.
And we can start reviewing that?
Unless you
Like,
guys
not in a tour, like for us to just like, I don't mean like go out and
Oh.
review it, to talk about how do we get this to move forward? Like, what would be the next steps? What do we need to do?
I'll
Okay.
go there too.
Yeah,
Let's get the maps out and take a look at it, so
yeah.
and see, maybe we can do a field trip.
It might be interesting to see if there are any trail partnerships. Like there's a mountain biking association that likes to set up trails. Maybe we could do some of this with a shared.
I did put in a mountain bike park in Shakopee right before I left.
Sounds really
They're
cool.
not cheap.
Nothing is cheap.
Yeah.
Cheaper than a playground though.
Should be an exciting year.
Yeah.
But I think it is important to see those sites too as a group, because
Yes.
when we talk about standards and you talk about themes, I mean, the most successful parks I've been in the area, like take from what's naturally there and kind of add to it. It's not trying to just shoehorn something in. There's a stream that runs around it. They put a nice walkway and a fence next to it, and that's part of the park. So I think knowing what areas we're trying to get as we work on these standards or options is
Yeah.
hugely important.
And to look at, to go look at City Park. You know, which is mostly ball fields, but it's not all ball fields. There's some other nice spots in there. And to look at the open space park and look at the neighborhood parks. And see what I see as being things that we can fix, do better next time. Good. Well, I think we can have a good year. Do you need anything from us on that? No, as when you wake up in the middle of the night with this idea, send it to Jessica.
I won't respond in the middle of the day, but you can send it.
Good, thank you. All right, where are we? Active planning applications, information only. Questions, comments? This is item 9B.
I had a question, so give me a second. No, this number 6, what's the location on that? The Craig Sherber one?
I don't know.
Give me just a second.
Okay.
I think there's something on the website, Jess, on that one, on the development page.
Now I'm already in the Hennepin County GIS,
Okay, whatever's easier.
only because she asked where.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Oh, 30 and 19?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. And then number 8. Can they hold church in a residential home?
Good question.
Or that I remember that coming up before. I don't know.
The number 6 or 8?
Number 8, yeah, I've not seen one of those before. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Yeah. To be continued.
But I've seen it before. It depends on the size of the gathering.
Mhm.
That's when you start to run into some triggers for some of our other code requirements.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Okay.
If you're gonna have a certain number of people there, you have to do certain things to the space, and then it stops being just a home. It also starts being another space.
Mhm.
But they have all of these things that, ADA accessible bathroom, those sorts of things.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, parking requirements, exactly.
I found that one interesting, so we'll
yeah.
see how it plays out.
All right, recreation supervisor update. What you been up to?
nothing.
How's that ice rink over there?
Well, if you take a step outside, it's kind of warm. So a little dry, I would say.
Crazy, huh?
All right, you may recognize the man in the middle, that's Santa. Recently, I have been working with our Human Resources Department as well as our Public Works team, as well as just spending some time out at the warming house, trying to get it, make sure that office is spick and span and clean and ready for people when that finally comes. That being said, it does look like it's gonna be in the mid-30s next week, which is not great for ice making. We are really hoping that it cools off, which is the first time you'll hear me say that. But it does have to stay in the lanes for quite some time so that we can get that ice to freeze. But as I know more, I'll let you know. Currently, I am still accepting ice rink attendant applications, so this is my casual plug. Please tell your friends, your neighbors, anyone. Other than that, working on trail information, so i.e. Hope, reading through that, getting the PowerPoint ready. Master park planning, working with HKGI, getting them up to speed so that they understand our needs and what we have coming up in the near future. The holiday toy and food drive, so that happened last Tuesday, so a week ago today. We received over 1,100 pounds of food and over $15,000 worth of toys or monetary donations for Toys for Tots. $11,000 of that was from the stanchion, from their, they do a holiday bar slinging, I don't know what the technical
Celebrity
title is.
bartender.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So they have a whole bunch of celebrities come
I
in
would
and help
know
them
this.
raise money. So they provided a lot of that. They also provided pizza and soda for the volunteers and staff that were attending the event and helping collect donations. And then the other thing is prepping for youth athletics. I know that I just said I wish it would get colder, but it also means that I have to ramp up for the spring season coming up. So getting that stuff ready to go. But if you need anything, feel free to holler. I am gonna be taking a lot of PTO at the end of the year though, so if you don't get back to you right away, just know that I will in the new year.
Good for you.
Thank you. City council report.
It looks like we only have one meeting in the zone for this period. We just had a meeting yesterday. I imagine it wasn't time to turn it around because it happened in the future by the time the packet was put together. I think the one exciting thing that we covered yesterday that you'll probably get repeated is we adopted an updated version of the city logo. So I don't know if you've got the ability to pull that up. Sorry, I just keep surprising you, Jessica.
We're really testing the IT skills. I bet I
can
can
do it.
highlight some other stuff in the time being so that I can find it.
So other major items, we made a determination on the retirement of our K-9 officer Zeke.
How old is he?
He is, I believe, 8 years old or will be 8 soon. So he's approaching the end of his service life. And rather than try to train him with a third officer, we'll allow him to be adopted by his second officer. And we'll be looking at a future K-9. Maybe of the same type, maybe something a little different, depending on what kind of interest we get from the officers. So you might notice some familiar items. The old logo had a house and a barn and a wetland scene. So we're trying to repeat some of the same themes, but in something that's a little bit easier to print, fewer colors, a little bit less detail, so that we can put this on things like the water tower or clothes, signage, snowplows, a little more easily than what we had had before, but still keeping true to the overall theme that we've had.
So all 4 of those are versions of the logo?
Correct. There were some minor tweaks. It sounded like the bill of the duck made it look too much like a loon. So that's gonna get adjusted.
Where this is the loon-free area, is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of loons in Corcoran. I see a lot more swans than I do loons.
Yeah, that's true.
But overall, I think council was pretty happy with how it turned out. This was based on a lot of public feedback. It was a very efficient process. We spent all of $299 to get it created. and edited a half a dozen different times and ways. So it was a very well-run effort. I think Kathy and the team and staff did a really good job administering that process. And we ended up with something that, I think this had like 60 to 70% positive feedback on the website. And we tweaked it a little bit based on that feedback. So hopefully people will respond to it even more positively.
I like it. Good job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good.
Other items that you might be interested in, we obviously approved the HKGI planning contract that this body had recommended. And of course, we hired Jay Tobin, who you just met a little bit ago. And he's already giving us some good valuable insights. So thank you, Jay. So
Yeah.
joining the team, looking forward to seeing you continue to contribute.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Any other topics anybody would like to ask about?
We're not accepting online participation in meetings.
That's a good question. So staff has struggled with the limitations of the Zoom platform to prevent people from spamming the meetings, both with audible as well as visual content. I think it's mostly been an issue for council. I don't know if Parks has had an issue with it, thankfully. So in an effort to avoid giving people a platform to spread garbage, we've determined that we will, for the time being, only permit general public comment in person. We may revisit that when we implement Granicus, if that gives us greater control. And if there's the ability to, identify who people are specifically and confirm that they're city residents, we might want to look at revising that policy. I had mixed feelings about making that change because I want to give people lots of opportunities to speak up. Having benefited from that personally in my past, but at the same time, it wasn't usually productive. It was usually the opposite. So we made that policy choice last meeting.
So you can still watch the meeting online.
Still
but you
available,
can't
but you
comment. I think we should do the same.
I think we are. I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Okay.
that was across the board is what we established.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
You're welcome. All right, garden stuff. Well, it's winter.
Building snowman?
Not much of a winter. I heard the frost line is, there's hardly any frost on the ground at all. So, but we'll be back.
Hopefully the owls are killing all the voles.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That would be good.
Yeah, that would be you should start hearing owls just anytime. It's the start of their nesting season. All right, park dedication fund.
It is.
Well, I went on there.
We have a sense for when, I guess this is maybe a question for Jay now that you've joined the team. So one of the common themes that we ask about every meeting is what is the interest on the park dedication fund? With Maggie out, we haven't been able to get an answer for a while. I think she was working toward assigning interest to it. But it'd be interesting, I think, for this body to see a future strategy to maximize the earning power of that fund while we're able to spend it.
If I can comment, so for your awareness, our finance manager resigned. And so we are bringing in a contract to help us with some things that we need to do that will help us get a better handle on operations as we've had a open audit, and then we have the audit season starts the 1st of January. So we have some big muscle movements. So I appreciate your patience. I promise you, as a foreign finance manager, I want to know where we're at. I want to get the best return on investment. And this isn't something I'm going to be able to get to right away because we've got some other big rocks that we really need to identify going into the beginning of the year. Just starting this time of the year, when does audit season start? It starts the 1st of January. That's also when we start the 2025 budget. And so making sure that we're good stewards of the resources that we have with those things. I can also promise you, once we get that, this is the level of detail So you deserve a report that came out before August 25th. You deserve a report that was printed off this morning, or at least last week when the packet was put together. But we don't currently have I don't have the ability to do that. But we'll get back there. With that, also I have to go through our policies to make sure that I understand how and where we can invest our funds. So I managed the investment funds for the city of Chaska when I was there. I had some certain constraints there. I currently haven't had an opportunity to familiarize myself with that part of my job as I'm on, just starting week 3. But I promise you that stewardship is one of my primary goals, and transparency is also a goal. So you deserve to know what's going on, and you also need to be confident and trustworthy that we are trustworthy of what you have entrusted us with. So we will get there, but it won't be tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, other business? Commissioner liaison schedule. Is everybody available to go to the city council meeting on the night that you're setting?
There it is.
This you don't need to know this minute. Other than Michelle.
I'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I sit next to you? I got you anyways.
You're all. All right, any other business? All right, Carol, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Bye.
Opposed? Okay. Adjourned. Woo.